I didn't think much of it when we first got the call. The city's been doing construction down in the subway tunnels, and they wanted a few archaeologists to check out some old sections they'd stumbled upon. Claire, David, Laura, and I were the lucky ones who got the assignment. Figured it would be a straightforward job. Get in, catalog some old junk, and get out. Easy money, right? Well, we were wrong. So we're down there for about 2 weeks, picking through the usual crap. Rusty tools, broken down walls, the occasional rat scurrying by. Then one day, we hit something different. There's this wall, kind of out of place, newer than the stuff around it. It's sealed up tight, but David's the first to notice a faint crack, just wide enough to suggest there's something behind it. Of course, David being David, he's already talking about breaking through before we even figure out what it is. "Man, there's got to be something cool back there," he said, practically grinning. "Maybe some treasure or a hidden stash from the war. You know, like Indiana Jones." Claire rolled her eyes. "It's probably just an old storage room." David didn't listen. He never did. And the next thing I knew, we were smashing through the wall. And yeah, we found something, but it wasn't treasure, not even close. Behind that wall was a whole new section of tunnel, but this one was different. It smelled like mold and metal, and the air was thick like it hadn't been touched in decades. The floor was covered in dust, and the walls were lined with weird old machines, some kind of lab equipment, way older than anything we should have been seeing. There were stacks of papers, too, all written in German, and I mean lots of them. That's when Claire pulled out her phone and called Dr. Weiss. He's our historian guy, the one who knows all the dark history stuff. If anyone would know what this place was, it'd be him. By the time Weiss showed up, we'd gone deeper into the tunnels. There were photos on the walls, black and white, all of them grainy and strange. People in lab coats, others who looked sick or worse. It didn't take much to figure out this wasn't your standard bunker. Something bad had gone down here. Weiss took one look around and told us we'd probably found a Nazi research lab, abandoned after the war. He said they used places like this to conduct experiments, stuff that wasn't exactly humane. Hearing that should have been our cue to leave, right? But no, David was already eyeing this massive iron door at the end of the corridor. "Come on, we've got to see what's in there," David said, all excited. He was practically bouncing on his feet. "Don't," Weiss warned him. "We don't know what's behind that door." I should have listened to him. We all should have. But there was something about that door that pulled us in. It had this strange symbol on it, like a twisted version of the swastika, but it was older, darker. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was behind it wasn't meant to be seen. David, of course, ignored all that. He found a crowbar, jammed it into the crack, and started prying. The door creaked open slowly, and I swear to God, the air that came out of that room felt wrong. Like it wasn't just old air. It was something more. Inside, there was this huge machine, all metal and wires, like something out of a bad sci-fi movie. It didn't look like anything that should have been built in the 1940s, that's for sure. The whole thing was connected to the walls, wires running into the floor and ceiling, disappearing into the rest of the subway system. "What the hell is this?" Laura muttered, stepping closer. David didn't even hesitate. He was already poking around, messing with the controls. Weiss tried to stop him, saying something about how we had no idea what this machine was or what it did, but it was too late. David pressed something, a button, a switch, I don't even know, and the whole room lit up. There was this low hum, like the machine was waking up after being asleep for too long. The lights started flickering and the walls vibrated. I remember Claire grabbing my arm, her voice shaky. "Lucas, we need to get out of here." I wish we had. I wish we'd just turned and ran. But no, we stood there, staring at this thing as it powered up. The hum got louder, almost like it was alive, and then, suddenly, it stopped. Dead quiet. We all exchanged glances, unsure if we'd just triggered something awful. I was about to say we should leave when we heard it, a deep, metallic, whirring noise coming from deep within the machine. And then, it happened. The machine sent out this pulse. I can't explain it any better than that. It was like the air rippled around us, and before we knew it, the pulse shot through the walls and straight into the city above us. For a moment, it was like the whole tunnel was vibrating with energy. "What did you do?" Claire shouted at David. I don't know. David stammered, looking as freaked out as the rest of us. We stood there in silence for a few moments, waiting for the other shoe to drop, but nothing happened. The machine powered down, and everything went still again. "Let's get the hell out of here," I finally said. Nobody argued. We grabbed whatever gear we could and bolted for the exit. But as we left the bunker, I couldn't shake the feeling that we just unleashed something we weren't meant to. Something dangerous. And that's when everything started to go wrong. When I woke up the next morning, I didn't think much about what happened the night before. It felt like some weird, messed up dream, and part of me was hoping that's all it was. But it didn't take long to realize that wasn't the case. It started small, really small. I noticed people just standing around. At first I thought it was normal, people waiting for the bus or zoning out on their phones. But then I saw a group of them at a street corner, all standing perfectly still, not looking at their phones, not talking to each other, just standing, staring straight ahead. It wasn't just one or two people either. It was groups, clusters of people all over the city. Their eyes were glazed over, like they weren't really there. I remember texting Claire, "You seeing this?" "Yeah," she replied. "Freaky." It got worse from there. By the afternoon, people were walking in perfect sync. I mean, perfect, like robots. Whole crowds moving together, turning at the same time, stopping at the same time. No talking, no looking around, just moving. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. I called David and Laura, and we all agreed to meet up and talk to Dr. Weiss. If anyone could explain what was happening, it had to be him. We found Weiss at his office, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. He didn't even wait for us to ask before he started explaining. "What you found down there," he said, pacing around his office, "was part of something called Project Valkyrie. The Nazis were working on a way to control the human mind, to turn people into soldiers they could command without question. That machine you activated, it was designed to send out a frequency that could do exactly that." "Wait," I said, trying to wrap my head around it. "Are you saying we turned on some kind of mind control machine?" Weiss nodded. "And now it's spreading through the city. Anyone who's exposed to the signal for too long, well, you've seen what happens." I didn't know what to say. None of us did. This was way beyond anything we'd expected. We thought we were just poking around in some old bunker, not flipping the switch on a decades-old Nazi experiment. "Can we turn it off?" Claire asked. Weiss sighed, rubbing his temples. "I don't know. The machine's been dormant for years, but now that it's active again, I'm not sure if we can stop it. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't want to go back down there. None of us did. But we didn't have a choice. People were getting worse by the hour. By the next morning, it was like half the city had turned into zombies. They weren't dead or anything. They were still walking around, but there was no life in their eyes. No thoughts behind them. Just empty. It was like they were waiting for something. And whatever that something was, I knew it wasn't good. We met up outside the subway entrance, and everyone looked as freaked out as I felt. Laura was fidgeting with her phone, trying to get any kind of signal, but there was nothing. David had gone quiet, which was unusual for him, and Claire was pacing back and forth like she was ready to bolt. "All right," I said, trying to pull it together. "We go down, find the machine, and figure out how to shut it off. Simple." David shot me a look. "Simple? Dude, we're talking about a Nazi mind control machine. How the hell are we supposed to shut it off?" I didn't have an answer. None of us did. But we couldn't just stand there while the city fell apart, so we headed back down into the tunnels. The moment we got back to the bunker, though, we realized we weren't alone. The door we'd smashed through before, it was sealed. Not with bricks, but with something way more high-tech. Thick metal panels bolted over the opening, almost like someone had been expecting us. Guys?" Claire pointed to the shadows. A group of men was standing just beyond the edge of the tunnel light. They weren't moving, just standing there like the people in the streets. Black uniforms, old Nazi symbols on their arms and their eyes. They were dead, but not in the same way as the people above. These guys knew what they were doing. One of them stepped forward, and I recognized him immediately from the old photos in the bunker. Dr. Henry Weiss. Not the one we'd been working with, but the original Weiss. The Nazi scientist who'd helped design Project Valkyrie. "Dr. Weiss," Laura whispered. But that's impossible. Not impossible, the man said, his voice flat and cold. Necessary. The machine has done more than control minds. It has preserved us. We've been waiting, preparing. My stomach dropped. That's when it hit me. These weren't just Nazi fanboys or descendants or whatever. These guys had been part of the original team, kept alive, or at least frozen in time, by the machine itself. David was the first to react, stepping forward like he was ready to take on the whole group by himself. What the hell do you want? You're messing with the whole city. Weiss didn't even blink. The city is the beginning. Soon there will be more. An army waiting for the command. Before we could say anything, David grabbed a loose pipe and charged. I tried to stop him, but it was too late. The second he got close to Weiss, something changed. David froze mid-step like his body had locked up. Then he turned and looked back at us, but his eyes, they weren't his anymore. David? Claire's voice cracked. He didn't answer. Instead, he took a slow step toward us, the same blank look on his face as the others. We all backed up, but there was nowhere to go. David, snap out of it, I yelled, but it was useless. He wasn't in control anymore. It wasn't long before I figured out what had happened. The machine's signal had taken over his mind just like the others in the city, except now he was being used against us. Get out of here! I yelled at Claire and Laura. I'll hold him off. Lucas, don't. Claire started, but there was no time. David was coming for us, and I didn't want to know what would happen if he caught us. I grabbed the same pipe he'd been holding and swung it hard, not wanting to hurt him, but not seeing another choice. He dodged it with this unnatural precision, like he could read my every move before I even made it. Lucas, we have to shut it down, Claire shouted from behind me. I knew she was right, but with David in the way, I didn't see how we'd get past him. And then it hit me. David wasn't acting on his own. He was being controlled by the machine, by Weiss, by someone. If we could overload the signal, maybe we could break that control. We need to get to the control room, I said, dodging another swipe from David. But I don't know how to stop it. Claire's eyes flickered with an idea. We don't stop it, we reverse it. I didn't have time to argue, so I followed her lead. We ran through the corridors, dodging David, who was still on our heels. The machine's hum was louder now, vibrating through the walls, almost as if it was alive. We burst into the control room, and there it was, the machine, bigger and more ominous than ever. It pulsed with energy, the wires glowing faintly in the dim light. Lucas, overload the signal, Claire shouted, pointing to a panel with a mess of wires and switches. I had no idea what I was doing, but I yanked open the panel and started flipping switches. The machine whirred louder, the lights flickering wildly. The pulse intensified, but instead of spreading out, it was collapsing inward like a balloon ready to burst. David stormed into the room, eyes locked on us, ready to attack. I barely managed to hit the last switch before he reached us. The machine exploded with a deafening roar, filling the room with a bright flash of light. I was thrown back, hitting the floor hard. The last thing I remember before everything went black was Claire screaming David's name.